There are deeply troubling lines, though, in this poem too, and Anthony, you've written about this. In particular, the image of the Jews squatting on the windowsill, the owner spawned in some estaminet in Antwerp. What was that like for you reading that?
I experienced it as a kind of blow because I was so open to Eliot and the language was so seductive, really. It was a kind of nasty surprise, I suppose. In one sense, it's a very familiar project. I mean, it goes back to at least the beginning of the 19th century, which is to adopt the position that there is no kind of language, there is no discourse to which the poet or the creative writer should not have access. So here Eliot takes the very vulgar and discourse of anti-Semitism, and in effect he says, here, let me see what I can do with that. And then, of course, the challenge for the reader is, one asks, perhaps in a moralistic way, is it appropriate for a poet to play, so to speak, with such politically charged language in that aestheticist, art for art's sake way?
It certainly is a challenge for the reader, isn't it, Jeanette? Particularly a passage in another of the poems we're going to hear, Burbank with a Baedeker, Gleistein with a cigar, where there is a comparison made between the Jews and the rats that are underneath the piles.
It's ugly, but it's important to face the ugliness that we have in ourselves, and that's one of the things that poetry does. It's not all about beauty and flowers. It's about going to places you don't want to go. And which of us, if we were to examine our conscience, would find that we have no ugliness there, that we have no deep prejudices? If you look at the way now that we are behaving with the Muslim community in our own country, it's not pretty, it's ugly. And if we say, well, look, we know more than people in the past, that's because they are what we know. We have built on that, we've learned that.
The question I put to myself was, well, how is it possible to, so to speak, acknowledge the ugliness, but at the same time continue to engage with the work? How do you engage with the world of the poem in a way which does justice to the poem and doesn't involve anything debasing?
What is it, Anthony, that allows you to go back to read these poems again and again?
Because they're remarkable poems.
And it's right for them to be played and read.
Of course. Read in interesting and creative ways that assist each generation to understand and engage with them in ways that make sense to that generation.